From Lisbon, this is Frontlines and Backrooms Brief, the key stories shaping our world this week and the commentary that makes sense of them.
Welcome to Frontlines and Backrooms Brief. It was a week of powerful images and louder words, but beyond the headlines, the real shifts are structural, and they are not waiting for applause. And let's start this week with European Union. Five years since the Russian war on Ukraine started, European Union leaders gathered in Kyiv to give support to Ukraine. And that picture of President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Council Antonio Costa, EU Commissioner for Enlargement Marta Kos, and many others reminded me. Europe talks like a power, but it acts like a committee. For decades, Europe told itself a story about post-historical space where hard power no longer mattered, where rules replaced rivalry, where the United States would always be there, where welfare societies are the European dream, becoming a reality that will never end. But that story ended in 2026, not with a single event, but with a series of shocks that finally pierced the narrative. The Greenland crisis, the sidelining at Ukrainian peace talks, and the rise of governments in Bratislava and Budapest that openly question the Brussels decisions and the European project itself. The rise of the far right in every corner of the European Union, and maybe most consequential, the quiet realization that Washington no longer sees Brussels as a partner, but as a piece on the board. The Washington most probably will not be there militarily if Europe needs it. The European dream becomes sudden waking into reality with the potential to forever change the biggest peace project after World War II. Properly dressed in blue and yellow colors, standing next to the man who daily loses at least hundreds of people to whom he is president, Ursula von der Leyen promised to President Zelensky.
The European Union loan of 90 billion euro. We call it the steel porcupine loan, because it should give Ukraine the strength of a steel porcupine, indigestible for potential invaders. Let me be crystal clear, and the President of the Council also said it. The loan was agreed by 27 heads of state and government in the European Council. They have given their word. This word cannot be broken. So we will deliver on the loan, one way or the other.
Madam President is talking about Hungary, thanks to whom a still indigestible porcupine there is not. Europe's eastern flank was never ideologically uniform, but the gap is now chasm, wider by every new day. Hungary and Slovakia have become the EU's internal opposition, not just on migration, but on the foundational question of what the Union is for. Both blocked sanctions to Russia, delayed aid to Ukraine, and framed themselves as the peace camp against Brussels' war camp. In Budapest, Orban has turned sovereignty into a brand. In Bratislava, Fico returned to power promising to restore rationality, which translated means slowing EU unity to a crawl. The Visegrad Four once was a coordination platform. Today it is a fracture line. Poland has pivoted toward the Baltics and a hardline stance against Russia. Hungary and Slovakia remain defiant. The Czechs are watching, waiting to see who blinks first. And Hungary and Bratislava are not blinking at all. When Ukraine shuts down the Druzhba pipeline, Slovakia stops delivering emergency electricity to Ukraine. When Ukraine says that the pipeline was damaged by Russian drones, Hungary blocks the loan and calls out Kyiv for political blackmail. Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Péter Szijjártó.
We don't hate Ukraine. The problem is that the Ukrainian state hates Hungary, and the Ukrainian state carries out an anti-Hungarian political approach for the last 10 years. Ukraine behaves in a very hostile manner towards Hungary. Please ask the Ukrainians why they have stopped the oil deliveries to Hungary. Ask the Ukrainians why they put the security of energy supply of Hungary into risk, why they do not give back the rights to the Hungarian national community, why they endanger our energy security, and I'm very curious what their answer will be. So the thing is that the Ukrainian state behaves in a very hostile way to Hungary in the recent period. Ukraine does not have the right to put our energy security at risk, and we want them to restart the oil deliveries to Hungary immediately, because there's neither any technical nor any physical reasons why they do not restart the oil deliveries to Hungary while endangering our energy security. And it's very frustrating, to be honest, that here in Brussels they usually stand on the side of a non-EU member state against EU member states. So the European Commission behaves kind of like a Ukraine Commission.
It is a game of nerves. Once you're in the club, you can't be expelled. And for sure, lots of other member states would like to see Hungary out. So many are so angry with Hungary that the Baltic states are urging the European Council to move to the nuclear option, activation of Article 7. If activated, Hungary would remain a member, pay into the EU budget, follow EU laws. But it would lose its seat at the table. It would have no vote and no veto power. The catch is, for Article 7 to be implemented, it requires unanimity from all other 26 member states. And one is already shaking with the head: Slovakia. Europe went through the dark ages of Nazism and fascism. Yet, 81 years later, Europe is cycling back. What was once dismissed as protest politics is now embedded in Europe's governing architecture. Italy's Giorgia Meloni has normalized post-fascist roots into administrative pragmatism. In France, Marine Le Pen leads in the polls and waits. In Germany, the AfD is no longer a protest vote, but a structural presence. In Austria, the far right leads the opposition. In Belgium, Finland, Croatia and Czechia, they sit in coalitions. In Portugal, Chega is the second strongest force in parliament and may soon govern. Europe is not drifting to the right. It is structurally rebalancing and refusing to admit it. The playbook is recognizable, Trumpanian. Attack institutions, dominate attention, frame politics as cultural war. But the goals differ. In Eastern Europe, it is about sovereignty and national identity. In Western Europe, it is about immigration and the erosion of social trust. What unites them is not ideology, but momentum, the sense that the old center is shrinking and the periphery is now the engine. And then there is Washington. For years, European strategists talk about strategic autonomy as a theoretical exercise, something to aim for a distant future. The Trump administration made it immediate. The Greenland crisis was a wake-up call disguised as a farce. A NATO ally threatening to seize territory from another NATO ally was not just diplomatic malpractice. It was a signal that the post-1945 order no longer restrains the United States. At Munich, the message was delivered in civilizational terms. Marco Rubio framed the alliance as a shared project, but with conditions. Europe must carry more weight, share more burdens, and align more closely. The subtext was unmistakable. Washington will no longer tend to a managed decline, while Europe rationalizes the status quo. NATO's European members are spending more, but duplication and fragmentation mean the sum is less than the parts. Merz has quietly opened talks with France on a joint nuclear deterrent, but any such capability would take years and still sit under the US umbrella. Europeans bristled. Kaja Kallas flatly rejected the decadent Europe narrative. Friedrich Merz admitted what had long been unsayable: the post-Cold War order no longer exists. Rhetoric doesn't change geography. Europe now imports more than half of its LNG from the United States. Its security still depends on American intelligence, airlift, and nuclear guarantees. Brussels can talk about de-risking from China. The real dependency runs west. After all, the uncomfortable truth is that Europe's crisis is not primarily external. It is internal. The institutions built after 1945, NATO, the EU, and the transatlantic partnership rested on two assumptions: that the United States would lead and that Europeans would follow. Both are now in doubt. But following requires a leader, and Washington no longer leads in any predictable sense. It oscillates between reassurance, coercion, and indifference. Europe's response has been to hedge, keep the US engaged while quietly preparing for its absence. But hedging is not a strategy. It is waiting. The real question, the one no European leader will answer in public, is simple. What happens when the Americans are no longer there? Not militarily, not tomorrow, but psychologically, strategically, as the anchor of an order that Europe never had to build for itself. So far, Europe doesn't know, and that is the frightening thought. In Washington, a traditional president's address, the State of the Union speech, became the state of the campaign, almost 2 hours long speech. With approval ratings under 40% and multiple crises simmering, President Trump used the congressional podium not to govern, but to mobilize. President Trump first doubled down on his most polarizing 2024 campaign promises, specifically mass deportations and aggressive tariffs, to ensure high turnout from his core supporters. He frequently broke from the teleprompter to scold quiet Democrats in the room, at one point calling them ashamed of themselves and even crazy. This is classical campaign rhetoric designed to draw a sharp us versus them line for voters. The atmosphere in the House chamber felt less like a government report and more like a high-production Republican convention. The speech began with chants of USA, USA, and featured a record number of guest introductions, including the Olympic gold medal-winning hockey team. Trump's tendency for awarding medals during the speech, like the Medal of Honor for the US goalie, transformed the constitutional event into a series of viral hero moments tailored for social media clips. Instead of proposing new bipartisan laws, Trump focused on resetting the narrative on his first year back. He branded his tax cuts as the one big beautiful bill and declared a golden age, despite public anxiety over housing and food costs.
The stock market has set 53 all-time record highs since the election. Think of that, 1 year. Boosting pensions, 401ks, and retirement accounts for the millions and millions of Americans. They're all gaining. Everybody's up, way up. In 4 long years, the last administration got less than $1 trillion in new investment in the United States. And when I say less, substantially less. In 12 months, I secured commitments for more than $18 trillion pouring in from all over the globe.
This alone could sound as a strong achievement, but it would be the first time in history that money committed is pouring anywhere before it was really invested. President used the floor to air grievances against the Supreme Court for their recent ruling against his tariff powers, using the State of the Union as a bully pulpit to campaign against judicial checks on his power. Regarding the world, several American First declarations carry massive, direct implications for the rest of the world. The most immediate global implication came from his defiance of the Supreme Court. Despite the court striking down his emergency tariff powers, Trump announced he would bypass them using different statutes. He enacted a 15% global import tariff that effectively overrides existing free trade agreements, including the one with Australia.
And as time goes by, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, taking a great financial burden off the people that I love. Moving forward, factories, jobs, investment, and trillions of dollars will continue pouring into the United States of America because we finally have a president who puts America first. I put America first. I love America.
The world's response: trading partners like Canada, South Korea, and the European Union are already preparing defense strategies. Tariffs were not the only threat. Trump also claimed NATO allies have accepted a 5% spending target. For much of Europe, that is a fiscal shock, the kind that collides head-on with the welfare state. Wrapped in the language of fair share from friends, the message is blunt. America's security guarantee is no longer automatic. It comes with a price. Trump declared that the United States had obliterated Iran's nuclear program, then warned it may already be rebuilding. The contradiction is strategic. Strength today, escalation tomorrow. By vowing he will never allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons, he turns deterrence into a campaign language, keeping confrontation politically useful and strategically open. By concluding with a look ahead to the 250th anniversary of the United States on July 4, 2026, President Trump framed the upcoming year not as a time for governing, but as a victory lap and a battle for the soul of the country. It was not a report on the Union, it was rehearsal for November. While Europe confronts its own ghosts of decades of passivity and Washington debates campaign rhetoric, other parts of the world are quietly making history. From what some are calling a golden age in cancer research, with new data suggesting we may finally be turning the tide against several forms of the disease, to the world's largest camera capturing 800,000 cosmic events in a single night, to 150 turtles reclaiming home in the Galapagos. The real state of the world in early 2026 is not only tension and division, it is resilience, it is discovery. And that's the world this week. From front lines and backrooms, I'm Vladimir Bobetik, and until next time, keep looking beyond the noise.